RT Trevino's coming back on the James Show. He has the Crude Truth podcast, works at Pecos Energy, but does his little side project for fun. Tell me, are you guys just popping champagne bottles over there, or is it just back to business as usual?
It's definitely back to business as usual right now, but we're definitely drill, baby, drill right now, James, and thanks for having me back on.
Well, gas prices aren't too bad right now compared to where they've been for most of the last 4 years. Can we expect them to go down a little bit more?
You know, I've been getting that question a lot, and I do think that 250 is a very good number for a national average. We could see it possibly dip a little bit more, but I don't see anything happening in the near future, barring some, horrific act of violence or natural catastrophe around the world.
Let's talk about the reason why we had bad prices for 3 years, and then all of a sudden in this last year they got better.
Well, actually, I think part of that has to do with the good old-fashioned Trump bump. Obviously, it's the opposite way, but the markets were actually predicting a Trump victory about 2 weeks before the actual election. And if you notice, the price has not changed very much since that time. And so we're hovering at about $68, $70 right now, and we're now starting to see those effects at the gasoline pump this week.
Whatever happened to the Keystone XL pipeline? Are we finally going to get that thing built?
You know, I am hearing that could be possibly something that's done on day one, that the Trump administration could get that back on path to getting completed, because that was literally a construction project that was halted the moment President Biden became president back 4 years ago. So that is something that we could do, which would then provide about 800,000 barrels of oil a day from Canada itself.
Wow. How long have we been debating this thing? I feel like we've been talking about it for 15 years.
Probably more since the Obama administration, for sure.
Wow. Yeah. I remember that was an Obama thing. So what about offshore drilling? Are we going to see more of that coming up?
I do expect that to happen. I do expect that to actually be a day one regulation that is deregulated, to where we're going to be able to get back out into the Gulf of Mexico and start drilling and producing oil there. The main thing that actually tips the needle on the price of oil is OPEC and United States offshore drilling. That actually can get the price even lower than we have right now. And if we can get some new permits going, we could actually see a dip in the price.
What effect does the Syria overthrow have in your world?
You know, at this moment in time, and again, that's at this moment, I haven't seen anything major. I am curious to see what will happen when President Trump takes office. Will he put the bans back on Iran that President Biden lifted? And if so, we will see a shortage of oil in the market, and the United States is ready to only produce more if need be.
Is there any reaction from OPEC to Syria or Trump?
At this time, I could not tell one way or the other, or have heard one way or the other if there's any reaction other than I'm sure what everybody's already heard in the media from President Trump via tweeting or on Truth Social.
So what are y'all talking about over on the Crude Truth podcast these days?
Well, thank you for asking, James. We just had on Carr Ingham, who is the president of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, along with former Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush. And what we were talking about was basically what you and I talked about. Where do we see the Trump administration taking us in 2025 and 2026? Really recommend it.
All right, I have a little fanciful idea here. I think we've talked about this before in the past, when the Russians drilled the Kona borehole, and it's the deepest human beings have ever drilled. Could we get, if we got Elon Musk to put up the money or someone to donate the money to do it, do you know the guys who could beat their record?
Hey, let's do it. That sounds fun. I'd like for Pecos to be a part of it for sure.
Right, because we were the first ones on the moon. We're on the bottom of the ocean first, and now we need to drill through the crust first, or as far as we can. I just don't like them having a record. It seems like something we could do here in Texas, just for funsies, just to show people up. You know, everything's bigger in Texas, even our drill holes.
I like it. Yeah, we can't let Russia beat us.
All right, so where do they find your work outside of WBAP, RT?
Yes, they can definitely go to thecrudetruth.com for any of our episodes, but also for anything oil and gas related, please go to pecoscountryoperating.com.
Thank you very much. RT Trevino on the James Show. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Always got to check in with the oil patch. Probably the most important industry in Texas and also the world. All right, coming up next, we're going to get back to this crossing of the two stories, with the Black Lives Matter reaction to Daniel Penny verdict, exonerated over the Jordan Neely death, and then also the United Health CEO. The suspect is caught in custody. I'll play you the tiny little soundbite I have of them taking him from the car into the jail. He made a couple of political statements there. Doesn't exactly sound like a right-wing nut job. But listen to this. BLM is blaming white people for Jordan Neely's death. Who do you think bears more responsibility? Jordan Neely, his parents, his family, his community, or random white people who've never met him? You think it'd be a bigger story that a whole country got overthrown over the weekend, and it's also in one of the most volatile and consequential parts of the world, sitting on a big pile of oil and right there at the nexus of different worlds. And, there's the whole Islamic issue going on. There's the whole adjacent to Israel issue going on. There's Iraq on the other side. There's ISIS in their backyard. And I am just floored at how little attention this is getting. David Hamilton's coming back on with America's Future series. When it comes to this Syria overthrow, David, I want to hear some discussion from people who know more than me on whether or not this is going to be overall a good thing, replacing Assad. Do you have any idea yet?
Well, yeah, I want to answer that, but first I want to thank you because you are one of the few shows that brings attention to these kinds of issues and some of the other major issues, and you do have an outstanding job of keeping these at the forefront, because we tend to focus on, stare at our own navel and worry about what's going on in our own little backyard. And this is really important. But, yeah, overall, I would say, al-Assad it is a really bad guy. His government was a bad actor. It exported terrorism. It funded terrorism. And it's also a narco state. So his brother, Maher, was the leader, Major General Maher al-Assad, led a really big, they were one of the biggest traffickers of Captagon, which is a synthetic amphetamine. And a lot of people don't hear about that. So they were funding a lot of their evil acts using narcotics. So ultimately getting rid of him, and this is a blow because he was funding Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed terrorist groups. Ultimately, it's good that, that area abhors a vacuum, and you see Israel and the United States trying to do what it can to ensure that ISIS and other bad actors don't take control.
Yeah, and I've read about this drug, Captagon. What is this? Like, is it grown from a plant that's like native to the Middle East? Like, why is Syria all over this?
I'm sorry, not a deep expert on that, but I do know it's something that they've used. It's very, very powerful, cheap to make, and it's highly profitable. So knowing that that's going to be interrupted is always a good thing. It's kind of like fentanyl over here.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And taking the money out of their pocket is always a good thing. We've got a lot of factions, as you said, that you have to deal with. You've got the Turkish element there. They don't get along with the Kurds. The Kurds are our friends. We've supported them sort of in a half measured.
You're allowed to say that. It just.
Okay. Well, we need to do a better job with the Kurds because they are our friends, along with the Israelis. And then you've got the Syrian Democratic Forces. You've got, an Islamic group called HTS, which is a bad group, and we need to deal with them. They're very much like the ISIS. I understand President Trump's desire to stay out of this. However, we have some geopolitical interests in the region, and we want stability as much as possible. I don't think we're ever going to have a really nice guy running that place. Nice guys don't survive in that environment. After Saddam Hussein was deposed or killed, you didn't get a nice guy after him. You're not going to do that. But we need you have to have a strong person there, strong leader, but they also have to be sane, and they have to understand that it's in their best interest for us all to get along. That's what's going to be interesting, is finding out what is this transition going to look like. Their new prime minister is talking to the outgoing leaders there. I think they need to get rid of all of the outgoing leaders. None of them should stick around. But what this new administration is going to look like is going to be interesting, and we do need to be engaged in that over the next year or so.
Yeah, and you can see it go backwards. We saw it happen in Cuba. Batista was a terrible world leader, but Fidel Castro turned out to be exponentially worse. And then it can go the other way where, Iraq isn't, the modicum of great government, but I think they're better off than they were under Saddam Hussein. Would that be a fair assessment?
It's a rough but fair assessment. I say the same thing about the Shah and the theocrats that run the mullahs, the ayatollahs that run Iran.
Right. Shah, not a great guy. Ayatollahs, definitely worse.
Yeah. Yeah, so the truth is we can't run everybody else's country, and we can't be involved in all of their internal affairs. But when they're exporting terrorism and they're trying to take over the world, and they're using their oil and their weapons to fund people that want to do harm to the United States and our allies, that's where we have to get involved. I'm with President Trump and some other sort of isolationists in the idea that we don't want to meddle in other people's business, but we have to look out for those who want to take over the world, like Pinky and the Brain, and damage us. And there are actors over there that we have to deal with. Having a presence there, we have bases there. The Russians have bases there. So this is a blow to the Russians. And so this is a good thing to the Russians, unless a worse actor, an ISIS-type group comes in, HTS takes power, and then we're worse off.
All right, tell them about America's Future Series.
We are a radically nonpartisan think tank and speaker series that focuses on U.S. global competitiveness and national security. We host summits and conferences. They're all on our website. Go to americasfutureseries.com. We would love for your people to attend. I want you to come to them. I want you to host and moderate. And also, we do raise money for worthy military causes.
All right. I'm going to go look up Captagon now, see if it's better than that stepped-on trunker crank I get from Garrett.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, David Hamilton, America's Future Series. I appreciate your expertise, sir. Yeah, just World War III. No big deal. Let's talk about some random homeless druggie who died on a subway last year. It's such a weird world we live in. And if you want to know how weird, you know how I'm doing all this blessedbethefruit.org stuff? That joke comes from The Handmaid's Tale, because they say blessed be the fruit in this dystopian, Christo-fascist hellscape future that they have planned. The woman who wrote that book, her name is Margaret Atwood. The book came out in like 1985, and she's getting interviewed all over the place in the media before and since the election. And these people, they just live in this fantasy world where they're scaring the crap out of themselves. They have this delusion that we are headed toward The Handmaid's Tale, where the Christians are about to take over and seize the wombs of all the fertile women, and then they're going to get raped by these high-status men and their beautiful wives. It's the weirdest thing in the world. And I really, help me decide in the next segment, do they really believe this? Or is this some sort of fan fiction that they have? All right, now to Dr. G. Welcome back, Dr. Laura. So when we're dealing with stress at the holidays, you're going to take on stress. How do you get rid of stress?
Well, the first thing you have to do is realize you have it. Some people don't have stress, and they don't take it in. And some people do, and some don't, right? And then you have to take care of yourself. So I know it's kind of cliched, the term self-care, but you really do, whether it's breathing, exercising, or doing any activity of self-care. That even watching a show is self-care. You have to do it because you need to address those feelings.
So what do you think about rage rooms? Have you heard about these places you can go and they'll let you put on some protective goggles and give you a sledgehammer and let you just break a bunch of dishes and stuff?
I've heard of those, and I think if it helps, if it makes you feel less stressed, then do it. I don't know if it does, but some people it does. And like, for example, if it works to hit a pillow in your room or hit something, that's the same thing, right? But if it helps, do it.
What about a punching bag? That's similar.
Same idea. If it helps, then do it. But it's letting out the energy. Feelings have a lot of energy.
Well, is this a guy thing? Because guys like punching stuff, but I'm partial to breaking stuff. Because when you do the punching bag, you're not actually breaking anything, and there is something fun, just inherently fun about breaking stuff. And so I'm leaning more toward the rage room than the punching bag.
It is a guy thing. I mean, even crying is something women do more of, and crying is for letting go feelings, and a man may like to break things, a woman may like to cry. So either way, you need to get rid of those feelings.
Yeah, I don't cry, though. That's not a thing men do. We're not capable of such things.
You are, but you don't like to do it. So you are, though.
All right, Laura, thank you for joining us. How do they find you outside of WBAP?
So I wrote a book, Common Wisdom, and I have a website, LauraGabayan.com.
GABAYAN, LauraGabayan.com. Thank you very much, Dr. Laura.
Thanks for having me.
Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, it's around the holidays that some people do some things that are out of the norm, including baking. Some of you ladies, you don't bake the other 11 months a year, and it shows. No, I'm just kidding. My next guest here to help break down some of that is Maria Baradell. She's an expert on home baking, and jokes aside, actually, home bakeries seem to be rising a little bit in popularity. I have some friends who are trying to convince my wife, Miss Parker, that she needs to start making her own bread and not buying it at the store.
Hi, Miss Parker.
You've probably seen a lot of this. Is homemade bread like a new trend?
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, home bakeries are thriving because people want fresh, personalized baked goods, especially during the holidays. And, you know, in a survey I conducted with Pulsefish, 86% of people who have bought from a home bakery said they plan to do so again this season. So it's not just about the food, it's about offering something personal and really meaningful during the holiday season.
Right. And so my wife is in this intermediate step where she doesn't buy bread that's made by the bread company. She now buys the bread that's made at the grocery store, and they just put in a clear plastic bag. Is that any better than the factory bread?
I think it's about the same. They still have preservatives and a lot of other ingredients to make it last longer and stay fresh longer. So I think that it's better if she were to either bake it herself or buy from a home baker or a local baker.
So what's the most popular baking item around this time that you have the most questions about?
Yeah, so on that survey that we ran, it was actually cookies, which is like surprising, but typically, you know, people offer sourdough bread, and sourdough bakes like scones are really popular around this time of year, and, you know, muffins and that kind of thing.
Does anybody really like fruitcake?
I don't know. I certainly do not. But yeah, I guess some people do.
Well, see, my brother-in-law's dad says he likes fruitcake, and I'll get him a fruitcake at Christmas and Christmas time only, but I never actually see him eat it. So I don't know if this is just a habit he got into because, you know, his wife got one every Christmas before she passed away, and he's just keeping the tradition going. Like, I'm a pig. I like almost everything, and fruitcake is just meh for me.
Yeah, it's true. I just think it's like a tradition, and there are a lot of things and flavors that we have around the holidays that are probably not everybody's favorite.
Yeah, well, the other baking trend that I see, not just in my family, but with close friends, is they're having to accommodate people with sugar or gluten issues. What are some good substitutes if you have to deal with someone with a gluten intolerance or you have diabetics in your family? What do you use for substitutes like that?
Some people use like rice flour or different kinds of flours. There is a flour that is 1-to-1 substitute of wheat flour, so that would be a good thing to use if you have if you're celiac or if you have a gluten intolerance.
All right, so what would you recommend if you're an experienced baker and you're looking for a new challenge? What do you recommend for those?
Yeah, so for what? For like growing your bakery or for...
Well, it's Christmas time and you want to show up with something cool at the family Christmas party. What are all the cool kids baking these days?
Well, definitely sourdough bread, I think. It's a skill you have to master, but it's not that hard. I think that everybody should learn how to make sourdough bread. And it's one of those traditions that are like from forever, but it's really coming back. And I think it's because of social media and Instagram and TikTok is really putting all these content creators are putting content out there about sourdough bread. And I also think that home bakeries are growing because of online marketplaces like Temu, for example, that make it really accessible for people to start their own home bakery. So that's making it be more prominent. And so I think that sourdough is a trend that is here to stay.
Well, that's what you're kind of known for. You went viral for making a sourdough on an airplane. You flew from here, Dallas, to Barcelona. How did you pull that off? Did you just do anything you want if you're in first class?
I guess so. Well, I was actually traveling economy, and that's actually what made it even more crazy. So what I did is that you are not supposed to travel with more than 3 ounces, right? So I needed, 9 ounces of my sourdough starter, but I divided it in 3 containers. So that's how it got past security. And also I had a bag of flour, and flour looks like a suspicious white substance. So they did check my bag before I got on the plane, but I passed the test. So,
they're like, oh, it's just cocaine. Go ahead and go through. At least you're not going to be baking. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So everything passed the test, and then I made sure not to bother anybody while I was making it, and I was very careful, and I had disinfecting wipes and hand sanitizer, but people had all their opinions about whether I should be making bread on the plane or not. And, well, it just went viral from there.
Were you able to actually bake it?
No. So
okay.
Making sourdough bread is a very lengthy process. So I just mixed it and kneaded the dough. And then once I got to my sister's house in Barcelona, we baked it.
Well, I like to eat dough. Is there any caution I should have about that? Because people are like, you get salmonella, you're eating a raw egg product. Forget that. I like eating dough.
Yeah, you should not eat raw flour. That's just not okay. But, I guess people do like cookie dough.
All right. Where do they find you online if they want to get more baking tips, Maria?
Yes, they should check out my Instagram page. It's Leaf and Loaf Co. Leaf and Loaf Co. And that is because I love plants and I love bread. So Leaf and Loaf Co.
How'd you get started in this?
Yeah, so I became obsessed making sourdough bread for me and my family, and I wanted to learn so much more about it. So I started practicing every day, and I was making more bread than my family could eat. So I just started gifting it to neighbors and friends, and they loved it so much that they wanted to buy it from me so I could make more. So I just decided to start, selling it. And every week after week, I started selling out and growing my business like that. And what really made me take off on social media was the two-pan method of baking that I popularized, because to bake sourdough bread, you need to bake it in a Dutch oven, which is like a very heavy cast iron pot. Those are expensive, they are bulky, and I figured out how to bake 12 loaves of bread in each of my 2 double-wall ovens, so 24 at one time versus 2 or 4 at one time in my oven. So a lot of home bakers are now using my techniques to bake so that they increase their production and they can make more money in less time.
All right. If you're looking for a sourdough bread taster, give me a call. This is Maria Baradell. You can find her online at Leaf and Loaf Co. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.